Dylan Grice, finally we get you back. You were one of the first people we ever had on Real Vision. Everyone was like, oh my God, he's the smartest man in the world. And then you went undercover and nobody's ever seen you again. So
Well,
tell us, give people a bit of background about you, where you've come from and what you're doing now, because it's been a really interesting journey.
um, background from beginning when. Okay, so I mean, I'm speaking to you here from Switzerland. So I've been over here for the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
I left SocGen, where I've been a strategist on the sell side in banking, and I'd enjoyed that very much. It was great fun, but I was I think I needed to be doing and not just talking, and so I had an opportunity to do that. I had an opportunity to come to Switzerland and really help out with a family office out here, one of the largest family offices in Europe, a company called Equilibrium, based in Zurich, and they really wanted some help building what was initially an equity business, but eventually became the kind of multi-asset liquid allocation. So I kind of helped to build that, to establish that, to really kind of embed the investment philosophy that went into the investment decision making.
And how was that journey? I mean, because that's a big journey of discovery from the strategist side to now helping evolve a big family office and then evolve your skill set at the same time.
Right. So, I mean, I started out, very beginning of my career, I started out as an economist. I did economics undergrad. I did economics postgrad. My kind of ambition in life was to be an economist, right? That's how sad I was, right? That's all I wanted to do. And then, I know it's funny. It's funny now thinking about it, but it's true. And I kind of loved the idea of trying to kind of figure out where, actually why some countries were poor and some countries were rich. Some people were poor, some people were rich. So this was something that was very interesting to me as a kind of young adult. And so economics is the way to try and better understand that. And I kind of just ended up. I was at the LSE. Everyone at the LSE was applying for jobs in banking, and I didn't know what an investment bank was. I honestly thought it was basically, when you go to a bank and you would cash a check and there would be someone behind the glass that was a teller. I kind of thought it was something like that, right? But they were all applying for banks, and so anyway, so I kind of, without really knowing what a bank was, I thought I would apply for banks anyway, which I did. Got a job as an economist and ended up thinking, well, this is actually better than doing a PhD because I'll figure out economics and I'll get paid much better. So that was my thinking. And what I kind of rapidly figured out, it's not that I figured out how to do economics. I figured out that economics was kind of practically useless. I mean, for kind of, theoretical economics, for all kind of practical intent, is useless. I really, really believe that. You go from trying to predict the economy to trying to predict and unemployment to trying to predict markets, and this is just much more difficult and, frankly, much more interesting. And so I went from economics to prop trading, and I was kind of prop trader for some time at Dresdner Bank on the equity desk, and that was a lot of fun too. Unfortunately, they shut that down, which is when Albert hired me at SocGen. So I kind of went from, my whole career had really been, I started out as an economist, then went to be a prop trader, then went back to being a strategist. So there's this kind of oscillation between thinking and doing. And then at Equilibrium, it was lots of doing, but there wasn't much. There was a lot of things, but there wasn't so much kind of writing or speaking. So it wasn't such a big shift to go from a strategist to actually helping to build a kind of framework for kind of multi-asset allocation. It wasn't such a big difference. It's not as big a difference as it might sound.
Right. And then you were running a portfolio there, or?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, the first few years, I built the equity business in inverted commas. We were a family office, obviously we weren't pitching for money, but I built the team, hired the team, hired a couple of analysts, managed the portfolio, but it wasn't so much, the thing that I always said to the guys at Equilibrium was that, one of the things that interests me is actually in building a process, building an architecture for thinking, right? For thinking correctly about investing, right? Is this kind of a good investment hypothesis? What makes a good investment hypothesis? How do we know that the investment hypothesis is wrong? How do we size positions? This was the kind of commitment that I made. Really was, I'll build you a team and build you a framework, if you like, that doesn't really need me to run it. So if I get hit by a bus, then you can still keep kind of cranking the handle. You've still got the kind of the philosophy is very firmly embedded. And so that was, that's what I went there to do. And that was fundamentally just equities. So we started out with an equity portfolio. That went quite well. So we then designed another equity mandate. It was a little bit different, but that also went quite well with the same team. And from there, there were a couple of kind of changes at the firm, but I ended up being asked to do what we'd done for the equity team, for the overall liquids team. So rather than just kind of, rather than being a stock picker, which is effectively what we were doing, we were now making kind of allocation decisions. How much between equities versus credit, right, versus rates, versus precious metals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So, and this kind of played into something that I'm very interested in, which is that I think that even though domains are very different, so an equity guy might think that the skill set is very different from a credit guy, who might think that the skill set is very different from a macro guy or even from a quant guy. And on one level, yes, the skill sets are very different, but on a more fundamental level, the principle is the same. The principles are always the same. The principles are, do I understand what's going on? Given this kind of radical uncertainty, do I actually understand what's going on? Do I understand well enough to know when the odds are in my favor? And do I understand well enough to know when I've made a mistake? Right? These are the kind of fundamentals of any investment. And so applying those kind of fundamentals to an equity team wasn't actually so different to applying it to a multi-asset class team.
Now, you also kind of built a whole philosophy around how you think about investing. You spend a lot of time thinking about stuff and how, because you've now built a new business. So talk a little bit about that, and then your philosophy about what you're trying to achieve now, because I think it was very interesting when you and I caught up recently.
Yeah, so I think we're in the pros. I mean, we started Calderwood Capital at the back end of last year, and the idea is that it will really be kind of, there'll be two parts to the business. One part is the research side, and the other part will be a fund management side. Fund management's a much more difficult business to get up and running than research, and so we got research. Research went live last year, and that we're publishing a monthly newsletter, a relaunch of Popular Delusions, which is what I used to write at SocGen. And obviously it's come on a little bit in those years because I've had this kind of family office experience. This family office background has really made a very big, it's really had a very big effect on the way I kind of see things, really. So that's the Popular Delusions is partly kind of influenced by the practicalities of actually, how do you actually invest? You might have a view on what's going to happen to the world. You might have a view on what's going to happen to central banks or at the next election, or all of these kind of things. But how do you actually invest? How do you build a portfolio? And it's not just what's the trade. It's where do I put this in the portfolio? How do I put it in the portfolio? How do I size this in the portfolio? So these are more kind of practical questions that kind of interest me, and that's what the kind of research business is really about. It's really about trying to tackle those questions.
But you also come with it with a specific kind of deep value framework as well.
Well, yes. I think a deep value framework, a valuation framework, yes. You know, I think when you say you deep value, then it has certain connotations. And I think people think that it means that you won't buy anything that has a PE of more than 5, right? And I'm like, no, it's not actually what it is, right? But valuation, absolutely, completely, very, very value orientated. I don't know how else to think about investing if you're not actually kind of thinking about the expected returns, right? So yes, we absolutely kind of bring that to the research. But as I said, on the flip side, we are in the process of building an asset management business, and so the stuff that goes into the research, these are practical questions that we ourselves are trying to answer. These are questions that we ourselves are wrestling with, because these are things that ultimately will end up in the portfolio, or ultimately will influence the portfolio in the asset management business.